Amina was a little girl who lived in a tiny room with her mother in the servants' quarters of a huge house. This house belonged to a very rich man, known as Mr. Aloy. He was a billionaire, famous for his fancy cars and enormous home with beautiful gardens and sparkling floors. Amina's mother, Fatima, worked for Mr. Aloy as a maid, cleaning the big house from morning to night. Amina loved watching her mother work, but she felt sad seeing how tired her mother looked every day. Although Amina was just a little girl, she could feel there was something strange about the way Mr. Aloy looked at her sometimes. He was her mother's boss, and she didn't know much about him, but there was something in his gaze that made her uncomfortable. She didn't understand why, but she would always hide behind her mother when he walked by. Her mother would tell her to be polite, but Amina couldn't shake the strange feeling. Fatima loved her daughter, Amina, more than anything in the world. She worked very hard to provide for her, hoping that one day they would live a better life. But deep inside, Fatima carried a painful secret that she couldn't share with anyone, not even Amina. A long time ago, Mr. Aloy had taken advantage of her, and she had become pregnant with Amina. She felt ashamed and hurt, but she kept silent to protect her job and her daughter's future. Every day, Fatima feared that someone might discover the truth. She worried that Mr. Aloy's family would find out and kick them out of the house. To keep her job and stay close to Amina, she put on a brave face and did her work quietly. She was always polite to Mr. Aloy and tried her best to stay out of his way, even though her heart ached with the secret she carried. As Amina grew older, she began to notice the differences between her life and the lives of the children in Mr. Aloy's family. She wondered why she and her mother lived in a small room while the other children had large bedrooms filled with toys. Sometimes, Amina would ask her mother questions, like why they couldn't eat at the big table or why they couldn't wear fancy clothes. Fatima would smile and tell her that they had everything they needed, even if it wasn't much. Amina didn't understand why her mother seemed sad whenever she asked about their life. She could see the worry in her mother's eyes, but she didn't know the reason. All she wanted was to make her mother happy, so she decided to stop asking questions. But deep down, Amina felt there was a mystery about their life, and she couldn't help but feel curious about the man they worked for, Mr. Aloy. As the years passed, Mr. Aloy found it harder to look at Amina without feeling a sense of guilt. He knew the truth about her, that she was his daughter, but he kept it hidden from everyone, even from her. Every time he saw her playing in the garden or helping her mother, he would feel a strange pang in his heart. He wondered if she knew anything, if she felt any connection to him. Mr. Aloy had built his fortune through hard work, but he knew he had not always treated people well, especially Fatima. He regretted his actions and felt ashamed of the secret he was keeping. But he feared what would happen if anyone found out. His family and his reputation were at risk, and he wasn't ready to face the consequences. One day, Mr. Aloy's wife, Mrs. Aloy, noticed something unusual about Amina. She looked closely at the little girl and was shocked to see a resemblance to her husband. She began to watch Amina and Fatima more closely, wondering if there was a connection. The thought troubled her, and she started to feel uneasy whenever she saw her husband around Amina. Mrs. Aloy didn't say anything at first, but the suspicion grew in her heart. She started to question her husband about Fatima and her daughter. Mr. Aloy tried to act normal and avoid the topic, but he knew that his wife's suspicions were growing. He worried that she might eventually find out the truth. Amina often felt lonely in the big house. She didn't have friends to play with, and the other children of the house barely spoke to her. They treated her differently, like she was not one of them. She spent most of her time following her mother around, helping her with small tasks or sitting quietly with her doll. Even though she had her mother's love, Amina wished she had someone else to play with and talk to. Sometimes, Amina would see the other children playing and laughing together, and she would feel a pang of sadness. She wished she could join them, but they never invited her. She didn't understand why, but she knew her life was different. She tried to be brave, but her heart felt heavy with loneliness. One evening, while everyone was asleep, Mrs. Aloy found an old photograph of Fatima when she was younger, taken before Amina was born. She noticed something in the photo, something that made her realize that Amina might indeed be her husband's child. She couldn't ignore the resemblance any longer, and her heart was filled with anger and sadness. The next morning, Mrs. Al-Yamide confronted her husband about her discovery. She demanded to know the truth about Amina. Mr. Al-Yamide, unable to lie anymore, confessed everything. He admitted that Amina was his daughter, and he had kept it a secret for all these years. The truth was finally out, and it shook the entire household. Fatima was heartbroken when she learned that her secret was no longer hidden. She had done everything she could to keep it quiet, to protect Amina and herself. But now everyone knew, and she felt ashamed and scared. She didn't know what would happen to her and Amina, or if they would be forced to leave the house. Fatima felt a mix of sadness and relief. She had kept the secret for so long, but now that it was out, she felt lighter in her heart. She prayed that Mr. Al-Yamide would do the right thing for Amina, even if she didn't know what that meant. All she wanted was for her daughter to be safe and happy. Mrs. Al-Yamide was devastated by her husband's betrayal, but she knew that Amina was innocent. The little girl didn't deserve to suffer because of the mistakes of adults. Although she was deeply hurt, she decided to let Amina stay in the house. She knew that sending her away would only cause more pain. However, Mrs. Al-Yamide set some conditions. She told Mr. Al-Yamide that if he wanted to make things right, he would have to take responsibility for Amina. He needed to be a father to her, even if it was difficult. Mr. Al-Yamide agreed, knowing that this was his chance to make amends. When Amina heard whispers about the truth, she was confused. She didn't understand why everyone seemed so sad and upset. Her mother looked worried, and the other people in the house started looking at her differently. She sensed that something big had happened, but nobody was willing to explain it to her. She only wanted things to go back to the way they were. One evening, Amina asked her mother what was going on. Fatima hugged her tightly and told her that everything would be fine. She explained that life might be a little different from now on, but she promised Amina that she would always be there for her. Amina tried to believe her mother's words, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. A few days later, Mr. Al-Yamide asked to see Amina alone. She was nervous, as she had only ever seen him from a distance. He invited her to sit down, trying to smile and look friendly, but Amina felt unsure. He told her that he was her father and that he cared about her. Amina was shocked, and she didn't know what to say. She didn't understand why he was saying these things now, after all these years. Mr. Al-Yamide tried to explain that he had made mistakes, but he wanted to make things right. Amina listened quietly, still feeling confused. She didn't understand why this stranger was suddenly calling himself her father. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with questions, but she couldn't find the words to ask them. Fatima worried about how Amina was handling all of this new information. She could see that her daughter was confused and troubled, but she didn't know how to comfort her. She had never planned for Amina to find out the truth in this way, and now she felt helpless. All she wanted was to protect Amina from any pain, but it seemed impossible. Fatima wished she could turn back time and keep the secret forever, but she knew that wasn't an option anymore. So, she focused on supporting Amina, spending more time with her and reassuring her that she was loved. Fatima prayed that Amina would feel secure and find peace in her heart. Life in the big house became strange for Amina. Suddenly, people treated her differently. Some were nicer, and others seemed distant and cold. She felt as if she didn't belong, even though she was now recognized as the daughter of the house. The other children didn't know what to make of her, and she often felt like an outsider. Even though Mr. Al-Yamide was trying to be a father to her, Amina still felt disconnected. She didn't know how to feel about him, and every time she looked at him, she remembered all the times he had ignored her before. Amina wanted to understand why things had changed, but she didn't have the answers. Mrs. Al-Yamide was struggling with her emotions. She knew that Amina was innocent, but it was difficult for her to see the little girl around the house every day, reminding her of her husband's betrayal. She tried to be kind to Amina, but the pain in her heart made it difficult. She often found herself torn between anger and compassion. Despite her feelings, Mrs. Alumide decided that Amina deserved a chance to be happy. She made an effort to speak to her and show her small acts of kindness, hoping that one day she could truly accept Amina as part of the family. But deep down, she knew it would take time. To help Amina feel more comfortable, Mr. Alumide decided to give her a bigger room in the main house. He decorated it with toys, books, and bright colors, hoping it would make her feel at home. Amina was surprised when she saw the new room. It was much bigger than the small space she and her mother shared before. While Amina liked the new room, she felt strange sleeping there alone. She missed being close to her mother, and sometimes she would sneak back to their old room at night. Although the new room was beautiful, it didn't feel like home without her mother by her side. Mr. Alumide enrolled Amina in a new school, hoping she would get a good education and a chance to meet other children her age. Amina was excited but nervous on her first day. She hadn't been around many other children, and she didn't know if she would fit in. She felt like everyone was looking at her and whispering behind her back. At school, Amina tried her best to make friends, but it wasn't easy. Some children treated her kindly, but others didn't understand her. She often felt alone, missing her mother and the simple life she knew. She hoped that one day she would feel like she truly belonged. One day, Amina met a girl named Bizi in her class who seemed friendly and kind. Bizi invited Amina to play with her during recess, and for the first time, Amina felt a little less lonely. Bizi didn't care about where Amina came from or who her family was. She just enjoyed spending time with her. Amina and Bizi quickly became best friends. They shared stories, laughed, and played together every day. Amina felt happy and free when she was with Bizi, and she finally felt like she had someone who understood her. Bizi helped Amina feel more comfortable in her new life. Back at home, Mr. Alumide decided to hold a family meeting to discuss Amina's place in the family. He wanted everyone to understand that Amina was now his daughter, and she deserved respect and kindness. Some family members were accepting, while others felt uncomfortable with the idea. Amina listened quietly, feeling nervous and unsure. She didn't know if she wanted to be part of this family, but she knew that her mother wanted a better life for her. She hoped that with time, things would get easier and that she would find a way to feel at home. No matter how different her life became, Amina's bond with her mother remained strong. Fatima was her rock, her comfort, and her best friend. Whenever Amina felt sad or confused, she would go to her mother, who always knew how to make her feel better. Fatima reminded her of her roots and taught her to be proud of who she was. Amina knew that her mother had sacrificed a lot for her, and she wanted to make her proud. She promised herself that no matter what happened, she would never forget where she came from. Her mother's love gave her strength and courage to face the challenges of her new life. As time passed, Amina began to accept her new life. She started to feel more comfortable in the big house, and her relationship with Mr. Alumide improved. She still had questions, but she was learning to live with the changes and adapt to her new family. Slowly, she was beginning to see a future filled with possibilities. Amina also made peace with Mrs. Alumide, who, over time, came to accept her as part of the family. They were not close, but there was a sense of understanding and respect between them. Amina felt hopeful, knowing that she had a place in the world, surrounded by people who cared for her. As Amina grew older, she began to feel more confident in herself and her place in the world. She excelled in school, making her mother proud and gaining the admiration of her classmates. Her friend Bizi remained by her side, encouraging her and supporting her through every challenge. With each passing year, Amina felt a growing sense of purpose. Mr. Alumide took notice of Amina's hard work and dedication. He started spending more time with her, offering guidance and support. Although their relationship had started on uncertain terms, Amina began to see him as someone she could trust. She was learning to believe in herself and feel proud of her background. Mrs. Alumide, who once struggled to accept Amina, gradually began to soften. She observed Amina's kind heart and her determination to succeed, which reminded her of her own struggles when she was younger. Although it was difficult at first, she found herself growing fond of Amina, treating her more like family with each passing day. Amina was grateful for the change in Mrs. Alyamide's attitude. While they were not exceptionally close, there was a newfound respect between them. Amina cherished this acceptance, knowing that it would help her feel more at ease in the family. She felt that a heavy burden was slowly lifting from her heart. One day at school, Amina's teacher noticed her talent for drawing. She encouraged Amina to join an art class, where she could develop her skills. Amina had never thought of herself as an artist, but as she began to explore her creativity, she found joy in expressing her thoughts and emotions through art. Art became a special outlet for Amina. She poured her heart into every piece, drawing memories of her early life and the changes she had experienced. Her artwork spoke of her journey, and it soon caught the attention of others, including Mr. and Mrs. Alyamide. They were proud of her talent and supported her in pursuing it further. When Amina's school held an art exhibition, her artwork was chosen to be displayed. She was nervous but excited, as it was her first time sharing her work with a large audience. Her friends, teachers, and family came to support her, filling her heart with warmth and pride. Mr. and Mrs. Alyamide were moved by Amina's artwork. They saw how much she had grown and how she had used her art to tell her story. For the first time, they fully understood the depth of her emotions and struggles. Amina's art helped them see her in a new light, and they felt a stronger bond with her. As Amina continued to excel in school, she started dreaming about her future. She wanted to use her education and her love for art to make a difference. She thought about becoming an artist who told stories of strength, resilience, and kindness, hoping to inspire others with her journey. Fatima was filled with pride as she watched her daughter grow into a confident young woman. She encouraged Amina to follow her dreams, reminding her that anything was possible with hard work and determination. Amina felt grateful for her mother's unwavering support and knew that she could achieve great things with her by her side. On Amina's birthday, Mr. Alyamide surprised her with a set of professional art supplies and a space in the house dedicated to her artwork. Amina was overjoyed and hugged him tightly, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. This gesture showed her that he believed in her dreams and wanted to support her. Amina spent hours in her new art space, working on her projects and exploring her creativity. She felt a growing sense of purpose and happiness. The support from her family and friends helped her feel loved and valued, giving her the strength to keep reaching for her dreams. One day, Amina and her mother decided to visit the small town where they used to live. Fatima wanted to show Amina where she came from and the challenges they had overcome together. Amina was curious and eager to see her roots, knowing that this place held an important part of her story. As they walked through the familiar streets, Amina felt a mix of emotions. She saw the humble beginnings that had shaped her, and she felt grateful for everything her mother had done for her. This journey reminded her of the strength within her and the love that had carried her through life. When Amina returned from the trip, she felt inspired to share her story. She created a series of paintings that depicted her journey, from her early life with her mother to her experiences in the big house. Each piece told a part of her story, capturing the love, pain, and growth she had experienced. Amina's story resonated with those who saw her artwork, especially other children who faced challenges of their own. She received letters and messages from people who felt inspired by her journey. Amina realized that her story had the power to bring hope to others, and she was proud to be a voice of resilience. As Amina grew older, she gained a deeper understanding of her parents' choices and sacrifices. She recognized the love and dedication her mother had shown her, and she felt grateful for her father's eventual support. Amina learned to appreciate both of them, understanding that they had both shaped her life in unique ways. Amina made peace with her past, choosing to honor both her parents. She knew that without their influence, she wouldn't be the person she was today. With love and gratitude in her heart, she looked toward the future, ready to embrace whatever came next with an open heart. Years passed, and Amina became a well-known artist whose work inspired people around the world. She used her art to promote messages of strength, hope, and acceptance. Her story became a beacon of resilience, reminding others that they, too, could overcome life's hardships. Amina never forgot where she came from. She continued to support her mother, ensuring that Fatima lived comfortably and happily. Together, they celebrated the journey they had shared and the beautiful future that lay ahead. Amina's story showed that, no matter how tough life gets, love and determination can lead to a brighter tomorrow.